Hello, and welcome. My name is Cavarius, and this story is titled Housewarming Gift. The year was 1978. We had just found our first condo together. It felt like the start of a new chapter, and we were both feeling the exuberance of the situation. The floors were pristine. The walls still held the faint scent of fresh paint, and the view from the balcony stretched into the growing cityscape. That first day was an endless blur of unpacking, arranging, and debating where to put the coffee table. The movers had been late, adding hours to an already hectic day. And to top it off, one of our boxes had gone missing in transit. We chalked it up to bad luck and focused on unpacking the essentials: dishes, toiletries, bedding. Despite being in and out of the unit and building, we hadn't seen a single neighbor the entire day, but we shrugged it off, blaming the timing of our move on a midweek morning when most people would be at work. We tackled different rooms when unpacking. I was in the living room area, and I noticed there was a box on the mantel of the fireplace. A white box wrapped in red ribbon with a large bow on top. A small tag attached had the word "Welcome" scrawled in sloppy handwriting, its messy scrawl almost mocking me. Something about it made my skin crawl. The carelessness with which it was written. Jagged loops felt deliberate in their chaos. The word "welcome" stared back at me, but the message left me feeling cold. I found myself unable to look away, as though the tag itself demanded my focus, holding me in an uncomfortable trance. My hands hovered over the box but refused to touch it, let alone open it. I felt rooted to the spot, my breathing shallow, my pulse heavy in my ears. Time seemed to stand still as I stared at my gift. My mind was racing in circles, thinking up every possible explanation for its presence. Each possibility felt more absurd than the last, but none brought me any closer to an answer. It was only when my wife called out from the bedroom, asking for my help with the mattress, that the spell was broken. Confused, I glanced at the clock and saw that an hour and a half had already slipped by unnoticed. I shook myself out of the fog, leaving the box untouched among the other belongings, and went to help her. Yet, even as I walked away, I could feel the tag's messy scrawl burned into my mind, as though it followed me with every step. By the time the sun set, the condo was half livable, and we collapsed onto our brand new bed with heavy sighs of accomplishment. The faint smell of paint and takeout still hanging in the air. The first night was a strange mix of exhilaration and fatigue. Every sound in the condo was unfamiliar. The hum of the refrigerator, the clunk of the air conditioning, even the sounds pouring in from outside were different. These, of course, would be hard to get used to, but even more unusual was the absence of familiar sounds. No distant TVs, no yelling, no thuds from other people in hallways or stairwells. After living in some questionable places over the years, it was calming to know the solid construction provided that much more seclusion from the outside world. My wife drifted off almost immediately, her breathing soft and steady. I lay awake a little longer, feeling satisfied with our latest accomplishment and thinking about our journey together. It had been such a long road for us. After all of the dead-end jobs, the crappy apartments, and terrible working hours, I felt as though things had finally clicked. Although I was very grateful for the situation, I'd be lying if I said I didn't think it had been rightfully earned. It was such a relief to feel like things were finally working out. My thoughts wandered from this, and eventually I drifted off. I was jolted awake by a loud, grinding noise that seemed to be all around me at first. It wasn't subtle. It was the kind of racket that makes your heart leap into your throat. In a dazed state, I tried to make sense of the sound, despite having no idea where it originated. My wife stirred beside me, mumbling something, but I was already out of bed. The condo felt colder than before as I stumbled toward the source of the sound, flicking on the hallway light. My bare feet slapped against the tiled floor as I walked out of the bedroom and down the hall. It had become clear by that point the noise was coming from the kitchen, which was bathed in an eerie fluorescent glow. The sound grew louder as I approached. My pulse quickened with each step. When I rounded the corner, I saw the garbage disposal whirring angrily, its metallic growl filling the room. I fumbled with a group of light switches, trying desperately to remember which was which. Finally, the sound of the mechanism began to die down, but my heart continued to race as I made sense of the scene. The sink was a mess. Torn bits of cardboard and shredded paper clung to the edges, and in the middle was a soggy, crumpled bow. It was as though someone had stuffed a wrapped gift into the disposal and flipped the switch. My glance shot toward the front door, fearing a possible intruder, but it was locked and chained. I knew we were too many floors up to have someone come through the balcony, but I went to check to confirm the door was still latched. It was. There was no way someone could be in the unit. At least, I didn't think so. I hoped not, but my fears started to get the better of me. I walked past the kitchen on my way to the bedroom, trying to make sense of the situation. It wasn't just the mess that unsettled me. It was the intention behind it. The bow the scraps of wrapping paper, the precise way it had been destroyed. Even though it must have been a freak accident, it felt deliberate, calculated. My stomach churned as I tried to piece together what it could mean. However, my main concern was staying safe. My pace quickened down the hall as my wife appeared in the bedroom doorway, bewildered, asking what was wrong. Guiding her back inside, I urged her to call the police, but we both froze as the realization hit we still had no phone service. I felt I had no time to explain. The growing fear of someone lurking in the shadows somewhere in this unfamiliar place caused more and more discomfort. I told my wife to quickly get dressed. While putting on a shirt, I formulated a plan to get into the condo hall, contact a neighbor, and ask to use their phone. It wasn't exactly how I intended to make my first impression, but I was desperate. We hurried out of the bedroom, down the hall, unlatched the front door, and pushed into the condo hallway, closing the door behind us with some force. Still confused, my wife pushed for an explanation. I told her about the jarring noise from the garbage disposal and the destroyed gift. I became frustrated when she questioned me about the gift. During the entire course of the day, she had not seen any gift matching the description I gave. The commotion must have woken the neighbors. The door across the hall creaked open, revealing a woman with a tired expression peeking out. She glanced at us cautiously as we asked to use her phone. Her response was immediate and unsettling. Their phone wasn't working. As I explained the situation, the garbage disposal, the gift, her expression shifted from confusion to something darker. Somewhat embarrassed by the commotion I was causing, my wife urged us to go back inside. When I tried knocking on another door, I was stopped. The neighbor mentioned she'd never seen anyone in those apartments. A chill ran down my spine at her words. I tried my best to explain my fears, that someone was in the unit when the neighbor's husband appeared, a tall man with a gruff demeanor, claiming he used to be a police officer. He explained he overheard the situation and offered to take a look as he disappeared into our condo, motioning us to stay put. The woman stayed behind with us, attempting small talk, her words forced and awkward. She joked about the building's faulty garbage disposals, but her nervous laughter only added to the unease. She questioned if I'd imagined the gift. It bothered me, but at this point, I was more concerned with the secondhand embarrassment my wife was experiencing. When the husband returned, he shook his head, saying there was nothing unusual. He couldn't find anything amiss other than the unpacked boxes throughout the space. The words hit like a punch to the gut. The woman smirked, her condescension unmistakable. I was still too baffled to be offended, and thanked the couple as my wife pulled me back into our unit and they disappeared into theirs. As we stepped back into the condo, the quiet hum of the air conditioning felt almost oppressive. My eyes darted straight to the kitchen sink, and I froze. It was spotless. The scraps of paper, the soggy bow, the shreds of cardboard, all gone. I stood there, staring, as my wife asked me what was wrong. She followed my gaze, but her confusion only deepened when I tried to explain what I had seen, the mess that I had discovered. I also described the package more, the ribbon, the bow, and the word welcome scrawled on the tag. She kept asking questions, each one making me feel interrogated rather than believed. The way she looked at me with concern made my chest tighten. It was the kind of look you give someone when you're unsure whether they're exhausted or starting to lose touch with reality. Eventually, she sighed, kissed my cheek, and suggested that maybe I was just tired. It had been a long day, after all, and perhaps my mind was playing tricks on me. She headed to bed, leaving me alone in the kitchen to wrestle with the doubt she'd planted in my mind. I lingered, determined to find some kind of proof. I began searching the kitchen methodically, pulling open drawers, inspecting the trash, even running my fingers along the edges of the counter in case something had been missed. But there was nothing. No scraps of paper, no remnants of the bow, no evidence that the chaos I'd witnessed had ever happened. It was as though the whole event had been erased, leaving only my mounting frustration in its wake. I couldn't shake the feeling that the neighbors had something to do with it. The way the husband had gone into our condo and declared everything to be fine didn't sit right with me. I began to convince myself that he had cleaned up the mess to make me seem irrational. The thought gnawed at me, taking root and growing into something more sinister. I walked to the front door, my steps slow and deliberate, and pressed my face to the peephole. The narrow, distorted view revealed the hallway bathed in dim light, stretching toward the neighbor's condo door. For a moment, I felt silly, staring at their door like it held answers. It was just a door, plain, unremarkable, with no signs of anything unusual. I almost turned away, ready to dismiss my paranoia as exhaustion, when something caught my eye. A mat, positioned neatly in front of their door, emblazoned with the word welcome. The word seemed innocuous, even friendly, yet it sent a chill down my spine. I let out a hollow laugh, trying to shake off the unease, but the feeling lingered. My mind latched on to the coincidence, refusing to let go. Was it just a mat? Or was it something more? Perhaps a sign meant for me. Over the next couple of days, I found myself watching them more closely. I told myself I wasn't stalking them, but in truth, I was. It became a compulsion. I hated how obsessed I was becoming. The longer this went on, the more like I felt I was losing my grip on reality. The gift box seemed to follow me everywhere, always vanishing just before I could reach it. As I turned into my usual parking spot one night, my headlights caught it. A small box sitting perfectly in the middle of an empty space. The same red bow, the same neat corners of wrapping paper, unmistakably identical to the one I had seen shredded in my sink. My stomach twisted, and I shifted the car into park. I was about to get out to investigate when a blaring honk startled me. A car behind me impatiently edged forward, its driver motioning for me to move. Reluctantly, I pulled forward and into my spot. When I finally stepped out to investigate, the space was empty. The box had vanished, leaving behind only an unsettling silence. I remember one particular encounter in the elevator that left me rattled for days. I had been reading a newspaper, letting the hum of the elevator motor and the faint music fill the space. The elevator slowed and stopped on a floor, and without looking up, I simply assumed someone had gotten on. As the doors began to close, I lowered the paper absent-mindedly, my eyes catching sight of it. A white gift box with a red ribbon, sitting just beyond the threshold. It was perfectly centered, like it had been waiting there all along. My heart jumped, and I lunged forward to the control panel, frantically pressing the door open button. The mechanisms hissed and groaned, but the doors refused to open. By the time the elevator resumed its climb, the box was gone. Another time, while throwing out some trash, I opened the garbage chute without much thought, my mind preoccupied. It wasn't until I saw it, a flash of red, slipping into the darkness below, that I snapped to attention. The red bow was being pushed down the chute just behind my trash bag. Without thinking, I reached out, desperate to grab it, but I was too late. It disappeared into the darkness, along with anything that might have been attached. In my frantic attempt, I had ripped my own trash bag, spilling it onto the floor. The stench hit me first. Then the sticky residue smeared across my hands and clothes. Thoroughly embarrassed, I shuffled back to the apartment, garbage juice dripping from my pants. My neighbors passing by shot me confused, wary glances, their bewilderment adding another layer to my already mounting humiliation. Their looks of indignation filled me with rage. Despite their naive and innocent look, I knew they were the ones behind this new, nagging presence in my life. That's when the obsession took a toll on me. I started skipping work, claiming to be sick when, really, I was lying in wait at odd hours, convinced that someone might try to sneak into our unit again. The lines between paranoia and reality blurred, and I began to question my own sanity. My wife noticed my erratic behavior, but I shrugged off her concerns. I was too consumed by my need for answers. I suppose everything came to a head As I was returning from a restless walk, I saw the neighbor's husband in the hallway, carrying a package, the same kind of bow I had seen shredded in our sink. My heart raced, and I felt my face flush with anger. I couldn't believe I had finally caught him, the person who had been messing with me and my life, caught red-handed. Without thinking, I approached him, my voice trembling as I demanded to know what he was doing with the box. He looked at me, startled, before well, you know what happened next, Doc. The question isn't what I did. It's, do you think I'm crazy? Thank you for listening to this story. My name is Kavarius. Be well.